All right, we just wanted to make sure that I have the right mic to talk into. The sound system here is not ideal, so please let me know if you can't hear in the back so we can adjust the volume. Can you hear me now? Yes? Okay, great. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. What a thrill it is to be able to bring the series of inspiring public programs to a climactic conclusion with Sharon, the best and brightest from Hollywood. I'm Angelina Yee, the Executive Director of Center for Pacific Rim. I know you've all come here to see and hear Sharon, but let me just say a few words about the center and what we do. I have a captive audience here, so I'd better say something. The Center for Pacific Rim is the university's bridge to foster understanding across the nations and peoples of the Asia-Pacific region through our education, research, and public programs. We house a master's program and a bachelor's program in Asian studies. We also have a Ricci Institute on Chinese Western cultural history, a Japan Policy Research Institute, a Nautilus Institute that specializes in issues of security and sustainability in Northeast Asia, and China Dialogue, an online discussion forum with China on the environmental issues. Since its founding in 1988, the center has been at the forefront of public programs and education about the Pacific Rim. We present seminars, films, lectures, conferences on a wide range of Asia-related topics. All center events, please note, are free and open to the public, followed always by a wine and cheese reception. With the rising prominence of Asia on the world stage, the center will play a key role in fostering a new generation of leaders with the knowledge and ability to engage with the opportunities and challenges of the Asia-Pacific region. I would like to thank the university administration, Father Privet, the provost and the deans, and advisory board members, some of whom I see here, Eva, Claudio, Tom Klitgard, and a number of others that, in my sort of nearsighted eyes I cannot see right now. But thank you all for your unstinting support over the years. I also want to express our deep gratitude to our dear friends, supporters, and donors who have helped us to become the center that it is today. I call on you to continue your participation and generous support for the center in the coming years. Let me now pass the microphone to Professor Patrick Hatcher, the mastermind of our public programs and the moderator for this evening's program. He's the center's distinguished Kiriyama visiting professor, and of course, Ms. Sharon Stone. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you, Angelina. It is very important that people speak into the microphone, particularly when we go into the Q&A. There are people in the other rooms, and they cannot hear unless you speak directly into the microphone. Not hold it down at your stomach level, but put it up at your mouth. Otherwise, we get strange sounds. So rather than going through a long introduction, filmography, biography, Sharon Stone and I will simply start talking. Sharon, you grew up in Pennsylvania.
Yes, sir.
A big town, a small town?
Small town. Small town in Pennsylvania.
So a small town Pennsylvania girl. Now a rumor came to me a couple of days ago that in that small town somebody looked into a mirror and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And the mirror said Sharon Stone, and she should go to New York and be a model. Did you go to New York?
I wanted to get the heck out of there. And my mother saw Eileen Ford on the Merv Griffin show and said she thought that I could be a model. This was my mother's idea as a way. I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to leave and try my hand at acting. But my mother thought I needed a real job. And for some reason, she thought that modeling was a real job. And so I said, me too. I think that's a real job, because any way out, I was going. And so she saw Eileen Ford on the Merv Griffin show, and she said, we can go, and you can have a meeting with Eileen Ford. She had no idea how this would all occur, but we went to New Jersey and stayed with my aunt. And I took a bus into New York and went to the Eileen Ford modeling agency. And they said that they would take me.
In 4 days, you were a model.
That's what happened.
And now modeling in New York, the Big Apple often tells me that across the Atlantic pond, there is another city, city of lights, where there is a lot to model. And so you go from New York, I believe, from the Big Apple to Paris.
Well, I started modeling in New York, and I had a great success right off the bat, but I had a very bad scar on my neck from a horseback riding accident. And when the pictures came back, there was a shadow from the scar, and they said, forget it. So they said, maybe you can go to Europe and model. They don't really, they're easier about all this. So I actually went to Italy first. And I modeled in Italy, and then I met a guy. And I was talking to him about, I love art. I'm just crazy about art. I'm just obsessed with art. And I am obsessed with this artist, Magritte. And he said, there's this Magritte retrospective in Paris. I was like, Paris? Like, you can just go to Paris? It seemed just inconceivable to me that one could just go to Paris to see an art show. He said, would you like to go? And I was like, are you kidding me, right? So I went to Paris to see this Magritte exhibition and did not return. And so I just moved to Paris. And I lived in Paris and modeled in Paris and stayed there for quite some time, almost a year. And I modeled in Paris and in Germany and just started flying all over the place modeling, because the French like me. And we had the romance with the French thing started then. And then one day it just dawned on me, like, what the hell am I doing? How did I get so far afield? I want to be an actress. What am I doing living this crazy life? And I just went, this is ridiculous. And I got on a plane and went to New York and stood in line to be in a Woody Allen movie.
Yes, I heard that there was a story in Paris that there was a French mirror, and the mirror said, she is the fairest of them all, but she should be in pictures. And so you left the City of Light. By the way, I hope you're not really surprised, but Frenchmen do like women, and so it's not unusual that they took to you. But you end up in the Big Apple, and there's a Woody Allen movie, and then there's another movie, and another movie, and another movie. And you're still based in New York, though.
Well, I did like one movie, and some pretty odd producer was in New York looking for girls to be in this scary movie, this sort of Wes Craven horror movie. And he offered me a part in this movie, and I said, no, it's a stupid movie, and I'm making a lot of money being a model, and why would I take no money to be in that bad movie? And he said, you should be an agent. And they tried to actually talk me into being an agent. I'm like, I don't want to be an agent. I want to be an actor, but I don't want to be an actor in a stupid movie. And so I actually made a good deal for myself for a first-time actor to be in this rather stupid movie. And I went and did this kind of horror movie. And then because I learned pretty quickly that if you're in a movie, it's easy to get in another movie. So then I went west.
To the City of the Angels. So we get you onto the West Coast.
Say.
So they say. I won't go into that.
It would be better at a religious school to keep it like that.
With Father President staring at us here in the front row.
He knows me well enough to know story.
So what I wanted to do, of course, because I wrote the flyer and the card that went out in our email, is move into your wonderful work in the field of humanitarian. So how does that happen? There's a Liz Taylor who finally decides to work on AIDS, which of course is being marked today. And there's a Brad Pitt who decides to go off to New Orleans to try and help rebuild Ward 7. And there's Sharon Stone. What was your sort of first effort, and how did it happen, and what happened with it in the area of humanitarian?
Well, since we're going down this path, I would like to just acknowledge that today is World AIDS Day, and just take a moment to say, just take a pause in the action and acknowledge all the people that we have lost. And as no one has survived the AIDS crisis, to take a moment for all of those that we are losing. As my mother says, there is no family left that is untouched by this crisis. We all know someone, love someone, have loved someone that is touched, has been touched by this crisis. So the bells are ringing. So thank you for all that you have done and are doing to help us, because I am the global campaign chairman for the American Foundation for AIDS Research. And all of the money that we have raised has gone to scientific research. And I'm sure that many of you here have helped us with that. We've raised $300 million, and we have made a big impact in the world. And that happened because Elizabeth Taylor stepped forward, took off her jewelry. It's changed the way we looked at AIDS. And at one point, I was in Cannes opening a movie at the film festival. I think we were with this opening this movie called The Quick and the Dead, this Western that I co-produced and starred in with Gene Hackman and the then unknown Leonardo DiCaprio, and Russell Crowe, also then unknown. We were closing the film festival. And the people from AMFAR came up to me and said, Elizabeth Taylor can't be here to do her AMFAR evening. Can you do it for her? I was like, can you even imagine someone coming up to you and saying, can you just fill in for Liz Taylor tonight? I mean, like, what? I'm like, how do you fill in for Liz Taylor? Like, how does anybody fill in for Liz Taylor? It was like, how do you do that? What do you do? Oh, you know, she gives a speech. And at that point, I started just hearing this kind of strange sound. She gives a speech. Do you have the speech? No, she just talks. Okay. And then we have this little auction, and she auctions off a couple of items. And that's, you know, that's pretty much it. There's a dinner. And I remember thinking, I'm going to pass out. Okay, yeah. And I turned to my publicist who was standing beside me, and she said, I think you have to do it. I think you have to say yes. I think this is the kind of thing we say yes to. And I went, yeah, I do too. She said, I think we have to say yes. And so I said yes. And then I was sort of brain dead until I got over it. And I couldn't imagine what I was going to say, because they said, just talk about some experience or some feeling you have about this. And so I went to the event, and I couldn't think about what I was going to say. I couldn't imagine what to say to this room full of people. And so I went in and told my personal experience with AIDS, which at that point had been that someone had come on the set and asked me if you know what Make-A-Wish Foundation is? Someone had come and said, there's a family, and the daughter's Make-A-Wish is she's dying, and her wish is she would like you to come and make her up for her school dance. Will you do it? And I said, sure, of course I'll do it, no problem. So I got all the stuff together, the rollers, the makeup, the fashion magazines, and everything, and I went to her house, and I thought, we'll do this, and I'll help her, and she'll get ready, and she'll go to her school dance. But I got into, the mother opened the door, and she was like, hey, great, thanks, you're here. And I walked in, and the little girl was on her sofa. She was actually almost, she seemed like she was levitating slightly above the sofa. She was so thin, and her eyelashes were so long from the AZT, and she was not getting off that sofa. It was clear from the second that I saw her, she was not going to the dance. She was not going anywhere but to God. It was over. And I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, you know, no one told me I was going to spend the time telling this girl what it would be like if she would have gone to the dance. And she just wanted to hang out with me. So I was like, okay. So I came in and showed her laid down on the couch with her, and showed her the magazines and talked to her about what it was like when I got to go to dances. And she was worried about her sibling that was going to survive her. And we talked about that. And then I asked her what her real wish really was. And she said her real wish was that she wanted to go again to the Paul Newman camp one more time before she died. And I thought, oh, God, how am I going to get her there? She's couch bound, essentially, and she's clearly going to die before very long. And so, I spent the rest of the day with her and with her mom, and I left, and then I went into this frenzy of how am I going to get her to the Paul Newman camp, and can I get the studios to give me the private jets, and because she's going to have to fly privately, and what are we going to do? And I couldn't get any of the jets, and finally I did what you really do when you know somebody on the inside. I called the Teamsters. And I was like, look, we really have to get this girl to the camp. And they're like, we got it. And they got a brand new motorhome. They helped me get two nurses that would go round the clock with us, and we got her and her mom and got her in the motorhome, and we got her on the road, and we got her to the Paul Newman camp, and she died in the camper on the way home. But she got there. And so I went to the party, and I told this story to these people because that was the only thing I knew about AIDS at this time. But of course, I had never told anybody anything in public because I wasn't Liz Taylor. So I just stood up and started to tell it, and from the first breath I took, I cried the entire time I talked. And of course, the whole room cried too, because they, 16 years ago, hadn't heard anything about AIDS in public. So I left. Oh, and then we had two things to sell because we'd never auctioned anything before. First, we had the item we had to sell, and then everybody was having so much fun. I auctioned off the salt and pepper shakers, standing on a chair, and we made like $120,000. And then the next day, they came over and said, well, Liz is not really doing that well. Can you take this position for 3 years? And my publicist said, this is a career killer. Everybody's going to think you have AIDS. This is just awful. This is a real downer. But if you don't do it, I'm going to kill you. I said, yeah, we got to do it. We got to do it. But this really is this actually what I said? This blows. This is really this, but we have to do this. This is the only right thing to do. She's like, this is the right thing to do. I'm like, are you in it with me? She said, I'm in it with you. She also ended up being the publicist who stood behind the Dixie Chicks. So, great lady. So we did this, and I am now in my 16th year of my 3-year commitment. It is a career killer, I can tell you. But it is a great, great journey. And it is a tremendous education. It is just it's a mind-blowing educational journey. And whenever I forget why I'm on it, I remember my day in the living room with that girl. So
That's a wonderful story.
My story.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure if Liz were here with you, she could then tell the stories about when she filmed Giant with James Dean and Rock Hudson, and then the years later when Dean was dead from the tragic car accident, and Hudson was the first big star who died of AIDS. And then it became much more of a visible item, at least in places like California, because of the movie Colony and the way people felt, particularly in this incident. And since then, there have, as you say, been many, many breakthroughs. Particularly, we are proud here in the city of San Francisco to have the University of California San Francisco Hospital Complex, which is several of their doctors are here tonight. They heard you speak there once, I think, in helping them make it even more visible within the medical community.
I can say that they are the people who, when I first started, let me put on a hazmat suit and look at AIDS under the microscope. So.
Well, I want to also ask you about the other, because you're not just in one field. It seems to me that they all come calling. You worked for a while in the business of children with malaria in Africa, is that right?
Well,
not
exactly. I mean, I was invited to Davos, to the World Economic Forum, as an AIDS expert. And meaning that I gave lectures there and worked in different, it was the same time as the tsunami, so they brought me in with the people who had just come back from tsunami and needed to put the money out, and I counseled on, post-traumatic stress in large areas and how to deal with that, and a variety of different things related to AIDS and the massive, because at that point we had 44 million people with AIDS, so it was a, big relatable thing. And I was in a giant lecture hall where the topic was malaria and how to deal with it and the economic crisis related to malaria. And it was the president of Tanzania and Bill Gates and the president of Chile, and I think Chancellor Brown, and people on the stage talking about it, and the whole way they were dealing with it just seemed such bullshit. And they wanted to tax, maybe we'll tax arms, and maybe we'll tax liquor, and and they just were like going on with all this stuff, and children were dying, and like dying at such a radical pace, and these bed nets are $2. And it was like, these people were paid like 35 grand to come for the weekend to just sit there and just bullshit. And I was like I was watching it, and like the madness of it was just so consuming that they opened the floor for questions, and I stood up and asked the question, like, why don't we just give them some money right now? And they looked at me like I had 3 heads, and I'm like, no, like, let's just give them, look at the president of Tanzania is praying. These children are dying right now. He's sweating and praying. Let's give him some money right now. I'll give him 10 grand. Who else will stand up and give him some money right now? And they said, Ms. Stone, take a seat. And I said, no. No, I will not sit down. These children are dying right now. They're not dying tomorrow. They're dying now. And we all paid all this money to come here. We're going to give them some money right now. Isn't there anybody else in this room that's going to stand up and give them some money right now? This is ridiculous. We're going to give them some money. We're going to buy the bed nets today. We're not going to do all this bullshit that you're all doing this. This is stupid. These kids are dying. They're dying today. Look at him. Can't you see him praying? Stand up and give him some money, for God's sake. Isn't there one man in here who's going to stand up with me and give him some money? Come on. And quite frankly, I had kind of said to the guy, I need 1 shill. I'm going to do this when they bust out the questions. I can't stand this another second. You got to get me 1 shill and sit him right behind me, because I know if I stand up and make a scene, CNN will come over here. And I had one guy who would stand up with me, and he wasn't standing up. And I kept going, I kept looking at him like, you said you'd stand up. And he was so paralyzed by like the sudden scope of the fact that all these news cameras came running over and that the guy on the stage kept going, Miss Stone, sit down. And I kept saying, no, not sitting down. And finally I just looked at him like, for God's sake, it's not that much money and this is really serious. And he finally went, oh, right, it's me. And he stood up and went, yes, I'll give you $50,000. And then at that point, people in the room kind of came unglued and went, oh, right, this is really happening. And then suddenly, this surge of people stood up, and we raised like, I don't know, like well over $1 million in the room. People just snapped out of it and went like, oh, this is a real thing. This isn't like a joke or some like publicity stunt. The children really are dying. It really is happening. Holy shit, I might want to actually snap out of it. And the Red Cross decided to match the donations. The people who had the patent on the bed nets gave up their patent. The shipping people shipped for free. And we got all this propulsion. And what happened is we ended up they made an estimation that in the 5 years from this movement, we ended a third of malaria in Tanzania. And it just was this like thing that took off. And then very shortly after that, Bill Gates opened the Bill Gates Malaria Foundation. So it just all kind of, and this is why I just feel so strongly that if you ever have an urge to be proactive. And my deepest belief, I just loved Margaret Mead. I like think she just was like a astonishing woman. And her belief that one person really can make change is so true. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You can look like an asshole. And so what? Like you do when you sit there and don't do anything. So really, you've risked nothing. You've risked absolutely nothing. So you look like an idiot when you don't do anything, and you stood up and you embarrassed yourself, and you look like an idiot. Still nothing. And you went home and you told a story. I did this thing, I look like an idiot. Or, I stood there, I really was scared, I really looked stupid for this extended period of time, and then something happened. Because I promise you, when I was standing there and they were telling me to sit down, I was so freaked out. I mean, like, and I kept thinking, oh my God, somebody please snap it with it. And if nothing had happened, I'd have just been a jerk.
Another great story. I bet they've not invited you back to Davos since, have they?
No. They want nothing to do with me. But I have been invited so many other fantastic places as a result of that.
Like USF. I'm also interested in, we had in fact a talk here about this by a Thai woman about battered women in South and Southeast Asia. Are you up to that subject? I know I'm dragging you through the deep dark side, but our Father President in particular here is very interested in social justice, and I believe he's taken people like Claudio all the way down to El Salvador to show some of the tragedies that occurred in his own life. And so we would like for you to, wherever you feel you can share, and is there something you could share about women, battered women, particularly those women driven into or sold into prostitution in South and Southeast Asia?
Well, we're still working on, we're working on this website for, sex slavery. And we've been really working on creating this worldwide website so that you can log on in many countries and report sex slavery. And it's just, I mean, come on. Like, there is no, it's just a no. And so right now what we're trying to do, particularly now that Ashton Kutcher and Demi Moore have taken such an active stance, we're really just at this point hopefully trying to just get them to engage with the website that we have and move them into our website, and maybe hopefully even maybe just move it over to them, because we've just been putting lots and lots of hours into building this website that anybody can easily, when they see that there's a sex slavery or sex slavery ring, they can just report it and have action taken, so that they're not in any sort of danger or trouble, but they can just report on and get some action or get some help. So we've just been working on building this for about a year, and it's not yet up and running, but it's something that we're working towards. It's something that we've been working on.
The last time I saw you, you didn't see me.
Do you know how many people say that to me? Really a little bit surprised that it's coming from you, but
strange people who has a Berkeley PhD. It doesn't often show. But I was over there on campus, and I heard about this, oh, you've got to get up to Greek theater. Now, I, as a little kid many years ago, went to Greek theater when John Fitzgerald Kennedy was there giving a speech. And I thought, is the ghost of JFK back in town? And they said, no, but there is somebody you might recognize and who will be leading the Dalai Lama into Greek theater. So I got off my rear end, as you would say, and put down my Starbucks coffee and went up to Greek theater. And lo and behold, there you were. What were you doing with the Dalai Lama?
Just hanging out. It's the funniest thing. Richard Gere is a very dear friend of mine. I made a movie with him many years ago called Intersection. He's like my annoying brother. He's just so annoying. He's just such an irritant. You know, Richard and I really love each other, and we just bug each other. And we just bug each other so much, and we always end up at these charity events with each other, and we just bug each other and torment each other and help each other all the time. We help each other raise money, we help each other with our projects, we help each other on everything. And we met playing a divorcing husband and wife. And we had to do this big scene where we break up, you know, where we're out at a black tie event and we have this huge breakup. And my character's very rigid and uptight, and Richard, of course, thinks his character is terrific. And, you know, I tell him that, you know, my character, you know, really loves him, but, you know, she just doesn't know how to love him the right way, and he thinks that I'm very wrong in my interpretation of the character. And I say, you know, everything we do is about love. Everything everybody does is about trying to get love. And it's just that many people do it in the wrong way. And that even people who are robbing a bank are just trying to get love. But they just don't know how to get love. They think that if they rob the bank, they'll get the money, and that'll get them the love. And he tells me that I am just completely insane, that this is the stupidest thing he's ever heard in his life. And then he comes back to work and he tells me that there's this person who wants to meet me because they find my theory so interesting. And he just thinks it's stupid. And so he wants me to come to this party, this event. And so I think I'm going to be going to like some kind of great cocktail party or something. So I get all dressed up in this kind of like suit, kind of velvet suit, and I make a great big beehive hairdo. And I think I'm all hot, and then I go into this party, and there's a big long line, and I think, wow, this is so great. I lean down the line, and then I see this guy in these robes, and I think, oh, that's that guy. That's that spiritual guy. I've heard a lot about that guy, and everybody likes that guy. It's so great. You know, and then I get down the line, and everybody's shaking hands with him, and when I get down there, he like reaches out like this to me, and I think, oh, that's how they shake hands in his country. So I go like that, and he grabs my arms here, and he doesn't let go, and I think, that's just so weird. He's just got my arms, and he's not letting go. And then suddenly, I just feel kind of like really overwhelmed, and I start laughing like a hyena, and I can't stop laughing. And he starts laughing with me. But I'm like, ah! And I'm laughing like a crazy person. So I laugh for like 3 or 4 minutes, and he's laughing right along with me. And eventually, some of his monk squad comes and gets me. And they kind of gently take me away. And then about 10 of them stand around and laugh with me for like another 15 minutes. I mean, I really can't stop laughing. All I do is just like I'm laughing like a lunatic. And eventually somebody tells me later that this is some kind of like special, you know, extra special greeting from him where he's like kind of, you know, cleared me of my grief. And I think, that's just great. Because I really haven't laughed like that ever. And so I stay and we all hang out and everything's great. And I think, well, he was really neat. And I get ready to leave, but he has to leave first before anyone's supposed to leave. And then all the monks get in a line and they leave behind him. And just as the last monk is leaving, he turns around and he runs back and he runs over to me and he bows and he goes, I just love basic instinct. And I'm like, this is some crazy kind of religion. Wow. Okay. Shit. I go back to work the next day. I'm like, Richard, what is up with those monks? That monk told me he watched Basic Instinct. Are you kidding me? He goes, oh, yeah. They don't have any judgment about all that stuff. I'm like, they don't have judgment? This is like a religion without judgment? He's like, yeah. I'm like, tell me a little bit more about that. And so I started kind of like talking to them and talking to him. And then the next time that His Holiness came to town, they invited me to a thing. And I called a few of my friends. I'm like, you know what? You might want to come and see this guy. This is kind of interesting. So some of my friends came, and there was a long dais, and His Holiness was at one end, and then there were a bunch of people. And for reasons unknown to me, he seated me on the dais, but like at the farthest possible seat away from him, like at the end. And Harrison Ford was like next to me, and of course we were acting up. We were throwing bread rolls off the dais and just carrying on, because I had no respect. I didn't know anything about what I was doing there. I was like, whoa, this is great. And for reasons still unknown to me, he kept inviting me back, being His Holiness, to these things. And I kept coming. And before I knew it, somehow I was just like a student, and suddenly I just sort of got it, and I just got it. And then at a point, I got a call that His Holiness wanted me to give. He couldn't come to give a lecture, and he wanted me to give it on his behalf.
Another Liz Taylor invitation.
And I was like, and I realized you can't say why because obviously he's clear about why. So I just said, how long was His Holiness like me to speak? And I just went and did it. And then over time, I started giving lectures where either I would talk first and then he would talk, or he would talk first and then I would close. And that's just, I don't know.
Thank you. We had His Holiness here with us. The Jesuit community hosted him and introduced him to the student and faculty body in a huge, huge arena that we have down campus here. And the one thing that I noticed was that he smiled all the time, even waving at us in the car that took him back to Loyola House, waving and smiling and looking and smiling and waving and smiling. A very different kind of personality. When you went into Greek theater, though, I think by then you were associated also with a foundation that is associated with us here, and that's the Himalayan Foundation, of which there are a couple of representatives in the audience. And how did that come about, that you loaned your name into there and you serve on their board, I believe?
Well, one of the terrific things that I have learned in this now long journey into Buddhism is about, well, first I would like to say, just comment on this wonderful thing that His Holiness does smile all the time, but he did write this book about the art of happiness, which if you haven't read it is just a wonderful, wonderful thing about the choice between pleasure and happiness. And it is really a choice. It is a choice to choose happiness over pleasure. And it is a discipline. And so if you haven't read that book, it is such a gift. And this choice that he makes, which is this choice to be happy, is an extraordinary opportunity. And it is astonishing because having been around him in the wonderful, blessed way that I have had an opportunity to be, when I was first around this happiness, I thought, oh, he's a little bit like Chauncey Gardner, you know. He's kind of just so light and happy. But he is such a warrior and such a ferocious warrior in the art of happiness that it's really unbelievable. The incredible depth of power and strength that profound discipline of happiness brings. That is like a tiger. That is really intense and cool, which is something I didn't really understand in my beginning years of association with that. This is just amazing. And working with the Himalayan Foundation is for me to understand, which has also taken me a long time in this journey, what real compassion, the compassion that is not that kind of sloppy, you know, I just love everybody, hippie compassion thing that I kind of was my beginning understanding of compassion, but real thoughtful compassion, real, the service of real important, dedicated compassion can be. And the Himalayan Foundation is a very dedicated, service-driven organization, and it's just such a wonderful thing. And they've taken so many children who were in such precocious, I think that's the wrong word, that's not the word I'm searching for, precarious positions, and taken them to safety, to education, to powerful lives, and done such a tremendously good work, and in the area of sex slavery have saved so many kids' lives. It's just amazing. It's fantastic.
There are a lot of our students, some of them who met you in the green room before because they wanted their famous picture with you. But what I'd like for you maybe now to share with them, because they're really interested in Hollywood. What is it like today to be in Hollywood and to be in movies? We're moving away from the humanitarian.
You know, being an actor is really, it's a strenuous job. You know, after I was really incredibly successful, but I mean, as a super successful person, I finally was able to negotiate a 12-hour day with a 12-hour turnaround. But I mean, that was when I really was hit my top of my stride. You work 15, 16, 17-hour days. This is a hardcore job, and you work in studios that are freezing or dying of heat with poured concrete floors, and it's no joke. I mean, you have to be fit and ready and together and ready if you prepare your scene, and guess what? It's not working. It gets rewritten, and you have to get with it and keep it together. And it doesn't matter how your day went before you got there. It doesn't matter if you're sick and have 101, 2, 3 fever. It doesn't matter if you need a root canal in your trailer and you can't have Novocaine because your face has to work. There's not days off. There's not vacations. You go to work. If you can stand, you work. It's a serious business. And it is not for sissies. And that is why you see the people who really last throughout their 50s and 60s and 70s, and we just gave a Lifetime Achievement Award to Eli Wallach 2 weeks ago, who was just so awesome in Wall Street. These people are the serious business. I mean, they're the long distance, they are the real McCoy. When you see the people that make it through the long term of their career, through the periods when you work and then you don't work because you're not in right now, but you hang in and then you work again, because nobody wants to see you the entire time of your life. It's not interesting to see an actor all the time. You have to go out to come back in. You can't stay on the screen 100% of your time. It's not attractive. You have to go in and out and in and out and in and out. And you have to maintain yourself. You have to have stamina.
You remind me of a book that I love. It's by Katharine Hepburn. It's called How I Went to Africa with Houston, Bogart, and Bacall and Almost Lost My Mind. And of course what she says is that going on location with these crazy people, Houston, who was a fantastically big drinker and would leave the set and go off and go game hunting and have all these other kinds of problems. And Hepburn, of course, who was a thoroughly trained actress and expected it to work it this way, was finding that it was a very different picture that she was in. It ends up being a classic film called The African Queen. But the book is also quite classic, to hear a voice coming out of Hollywood telling that kind of story. What I was also aiming about, and you might be able to talk to that question, is that you hear from some women stars, even like Bette Davis or Hepburn, that there were long periods in times because of the way the movie business, particularly today in America, is so aimed at a young audience that you're no longer young enough to be in that pile. And so women more than men drop off at 30 or 40. If you go to France, you see Catherine Deneuve at 75 still making wonderful films, but the French film industry seems to be aimed at a larger, perhaps, member of adults. So do you find that, in fact, in Hollywood there is a bias against women before men in this aging process?
Well, you know, Meryl Streep is doing great. I think there are periods, pieces of women's life that they haven't shown. They haven't really shown women in their 40s. except to say women in their 40s trying to date their daughter's man. This period of women in their 40s, when women are their most, and I use this word on purpose, virile, is a period when I believe men can be very, very threatened by women. Because women are very smart, very sexy, and very powerful in their 40s. I think probably the most powerful period of a woman's life is in her 40s. So we have been obliterated from being filmed during our 40s. It's just hilarious to me. You say, hello, I'm 40, and it's like... However, if you're in Europe, hello, I'm 40, and you're just like, let's get that on film. It's really intriguing. But America will not look at a woman in her 40s on film.
Well, I've noticed in your film life that you have been able to keep alive a kind of sense of fashion. Do you still do some work in that area, at least with pushing, say, what is one of the great perfumes that, it's not Chanel No. 5, but did you do Dior?
I have a Dior contract. Yeah.
And you've also done L.A. Law, is that true? As a
I did Law and Order.
Law and Order.
Yeah, and I started my family at 40. And I did character parts so that I wouldn't be gone for more than 2.5 weeks. So I just did all these different character movies during that period, and worked with tremendous directors, just tremendously cool directors. That's the way I dealt with it.
Speaking of this family, I believe there's 3 young boys, the youngest of whom is an expert in French cheeses. Is that right?
He is. He's a cheese hound. My 4-year-old is a cheese hound.
Better that than a Scotch hound like me, but that's another subject. That would not be good for a 4-year-old. This is the part of the evening that Angelina loves because she's into Q&A. She even runs her staff meetings as Q&A. So now what I'm telling you is if you raise your hand, I will pass you this microphone as long as you promise to speak directly into it. And you may ask Ms. Stone a question. Now don't all be shy. There must be a student who wants to go to Paramount and star in a film tomorrow. Here you are, dear.
You said you spoke before or after the Dalai Lama. What did you speak on?
Well, it depends on the experience. For example, we spoke a couple times at a university, and one time I spoke about that your life is like a book, and every day you write a page of the book of your life. Maybe you don't like it, you turn the page. But nevertheless, you'll always carry that book with you. It will always be your book. It'll always be your page. Maybe no one else will ever read the page of that book, but that book will always belong to you. And I said that on that day, in the page of their book, they would write that they had met the 14th Dalai Lama, that he was just a man, a regular guy, flesh and blood, but that he had chosen to step up to his destiny. We could thank him for that when they put all those things on the floor, in his case, and he could go up and choose the belongings of the 13th Dalai Lama, and that would prove that he was, in fact, the incarnate Lama. He didn't have to pick up the comb, the things, and say, yeah, it's me. I'm the one, and choose with integrity this enormous task of being this thing. He didn't have to, but he did. He stepped with integrity to his destiny. This today is the thing that they would have on the page of their book. Their life intersected with this. This was the intersection of their destiny, to be in this room with His Holiness. They in their life would then have this understanding that they would have this opportunity to know this truth, that you can, in fact, choose how to meet your destiny. And they had this enormous experience, this enormous example of this experience before them, sharing with them what that really meant, to do or not to do that. They could write that in their book, turn the page, and keep it a secret. No one may never know again about that page in their book. Or they could say, wow, that might be a big chapter. It might be the title of my book. But that's what was happening before them on that day. And I wanted them to understand about this understanding of their book. And so that's what I talked to them about that day. And then I went back and I said to His Holiness, okay, thank you very much. And he said, 2 for 2. That's how he is.
Hello. So my question has to do with a lot of movements and causes in the world, like children in malaria or AIDS in the world. A lot of these causes, sometimes they start with a lot of momentum and a lot of movement, a lot of passion. But sometimes media, at least mainstream media and news, tends to drop off from the subject, move on to another one. How do you maintain, or how would one continue to persist in, how should I put it, exposing, the concerns and issues of the global community?
So I think, if I get this right, are you asking me how you can do it? Well, let's stay specific to you, okay? Because it's between you and me, and I know how to do it for me, okay? So if you want us to pick a subject, and you want to keep people educated, right? You have to choose, things work in patterns, right? We know that everything happens in patterns, like everything, right? We understand this mathematically, that everything works in a pattern. So you're going to have to pick the pattern that you get it to work for you. Right? So you're going to have to pick what it is you want to do, and then you have to pick your pattern of how you're going to make it happen, like an outline, right? Your cause, what it is that really, but you have to decide, first and foremost, what is it that makes it happen for me, so that you can maintain your pattern, right? Then you're going to have to stay on the people that you want them to work for you, because you're going to have to keep getting them to work for you. And the way you get them to work for you is in gratitude. People are going to work for you like slaves. They're going to work for you if they work for you because you're grateful that they're working for you. So you have to pick your cause, the one that makes you happy and gets you going, that lights your fire. Then you're going to have to pick your pattern of behavior that you can maintain. And then you're going to have to be in gratitude for the people that you have working for you. The media, you have to thank them when they work for you. Whoever it is that you keep getting to keep your cause alive. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Okay, thank you.
I have a really deep passion for Asia broadly, but I've been lucky to do a lot of traveling and volunteering in Southeast Asia, and we strayed from the humanitarian angle a little bit, and we didn't really hear a lot about your experiences there. And I was hoping you would tell us a story about your most memorable or a moment of excellence related to a program or an experience you had in Southeast Asia.
Well, I haven't spent a lot of time in Asia. I've traveled just a little bit in Asia in general. And I just, you know, and I haven't had a lot of super engagement. I've raised money for AIDS programs in China. I've raised money to create programs for AIDS benefits to children in China. Because what we don't have drugs for children with AIDS. We have adult drugs for AIDS. But like we have children's Tylenol, you know, and children's all drugs like that, children's doses of penicillin and so forth, we don't have children's drugs for AIDS. So this is one of the reasons that children get so sick when we can't sort of modulate the medication for children. So I raised money. What was one of the big things I did for my 50th birthday was that instead of wanting presents, I try to get people to give huge donations to raise money for children's research for AIDS. And I raised a bunch of money, and then I gave the money to Asia. I gave the money, a couple $1 million first to Asia. And I started a program for children's research, because this is one thing that we really do not have. And children suffer so intensely from AIDS in a way that's even much more shocking than the way that adults suffer from AIDS. So that's one thing.
Hi. How often do you see the Dalai Lama? Like, do you hang out with him? When was the last time, maybe? Yeah.
Well, no. You know, no. And in fact, funnily enough, over these years, he used to offer me these private teachings. Every time he came, he would offer me a private teaching. And every time I got a private teaching, I would give it away to someone else. I would give it away to someone who had a terminal illness. I would give it away to someone else who I kept saying needed it more than I did. Until eventually I heard, she's taken the private teaching. She's not giving it to someone else. That's it. She just can't give it away anymore. And each time I would be like, but really this time? And His Holiness, his time is so valuable that I just can't take it up. It just is not, it's not fair and it's not appropriate. I don't really have any big questions. You know, and I just kept doing that. It was so stupid. And then finally, when he was here the last time, and I did the opening talk, before I went on, I was like, I need to speak to His Holiness by myself. I have some stuff I need to talk to him about. And I sat down with him, and he was so sweet, you know. And in the recent times that he's been around, I have actually said, I need some time with His Holiness by myself. I have a couple of things I need to talk to him about. And I'll just pop in and say, I need a few minutes by myself, because in recent times, there's been a few things that I'm like, I just need a second. But because no, I don't feel that I need to take up his time with my bullshit. I'm like, he's got stuff to do, and it isn't about me. So I don't try, I really, really try not to take up his personal space. I try to do what is asked of me and then get out of the way. Oh, but I can tell you that one time I had such a burning question, and I was standing by the stage thinking, oh, I want to ask him a question. I want to ask him this question. I just want to ask him this question. And I just kept thinking my question. I kept trying to get in there, and he just ignored me. He walked by, and I was like, I really got this question. I just need a second. And he went on the stage, and there were a bunch of Chinese monks, and there were a bunch of Tibetan monks. It was huge. He was lecturing in this gigantic, gigantic hall. And I was like, oh. And I went back to my seat I was way back in the hall, and I sat in my seat, and I was like, oh, I just have this question. I just have this question. And he got ready to start the lecture, and he said in his, like he does, he sort of has that rumbling thing that he does before he starts, and he goes, "Oh, before we start," and he answered my question. And then he started the thing, and I was like, how did he do that? It was like so crazy. He just answered the question like out of the air. And I was like, never will I doubt like his abilities of concentration ever again. It was like unbelievable. I was like, well, I guess he doesn't really need to stop for the chit chat. He just moved through. It was cool.
Hi, I'm a huge admirer of your work. Thank you very much. I hope you received the Open Heart Foundation invitation that I gave to you for a friend of mine. I work here at USF on the project to end juvenile life without parole by looking at international legal standards. And I found that a lot of juvenile defense attorneys and the...
Put your mic a little closer, please.
Oh, sorry. I work on juvenile life without parole, the project to end it here at USF. And I work with attorneys and lawyers and judges, many of whom aren't receptive to international law or policies or practices in American jurisprudence. And I'm wondering, based on your experience doing nonprofit work and working with the Dalai Lama, if you have any insight as to how to encourage sort of myopic thinkers to think beyond their own conservative, basically non-accountable ways to actually consider alternative ways of reaching some sort of collaborative solution. Is that clear?
Yes, I do. First of all, I would encourage you to take all of your judgmental statements out of the way you're speaking about the people you want to have hear you. You can't reach anybody until you can see them with a different heart than the way you're seeing them now. You're not seeing them with an open heart, so they can't hear you. Your aggressive way of seeing them is going to make them close their ears to hear you. So first, you're going to have to see them before they can see you. So I'm going to ask you to sit in meditation and be able to see them as people who are guarded against you. And when you can sit in an open and loving space when you address them, they're going to be able to hear you. The first time I spoke, the very first time His Holiness asked me to speak, he was going to give a lecture. The Secret Service has to lock down the building for 45 minutes before he can come into it. So he just needed me to talk while they locked down the building. And I went in, and the entire side of the stage were bleachers with juvenile offenders who were there in their orange jumpsuits. But they didn't tell me anything in advance. I just walked in, and there were all these kids. And I don't go prepared in advance because then I wouldn't be present. And so I had brought a dictionary for some reason. When I left the house, I grabbed the dictionary. And so I opened it and I read the definition of compassion. And then I asked those kids if they had ever had anyone be compassionate to them, any of them. They all said no. And I asked them if they had ever been compassionate to anyone. And they all said no. And I asked them if any of them would like to share in a compassionate action. And two of them stood up. And I went over and I hugged each of the two of them. And they both hugged me back. And then I asked them both if they felt that they had had their first compassionate experience, and they both said yes. I think we really underestimate how these small actions of being genuinely present and really experiencing the fact that it's how you stand in presence and how you present yourself and how you allow the other person to present themselves, what will occur, what can change. Thanks for your good question.
Thank you for being here, Ms. Stone. I probably don't need a microphone. My apologies. Thank you for being present and aware, Ms. Stone. My question is regarding AMFAR and other international AIDS research and fundraising groups and what it's like working with them, such as the Elton John AIDS Foundation. And could you speak whether it's more of a collaboration or a competition?
No. Well, Elton is terrific. He's really terrific. But there is a problem that all of these different organizations do compete. If every organization had to give up their information, not just AIDS, but cancer or leukemia or whatever everybody's looking for a cure, if everybody gave up their information and worked together, probably we'd have cures for everything, right? That's the logic of it, right? And probably if the drug companies wanted it to work out and it wasn't all so successful for everybody to be diseased and dying, it'd probably be over. I mean, you don't really need me to tell you this. I have spoken.
As you are concluding your speaking, I want to tell you that we shift in a few moments to another venue, and in the process I wanted to make sure that you understood that this evening would not have happened without the help of a fabulous woman I've known since she was a so-called river rat from the Russian River until she became the mother of 3 wonderful children. And Lisa, I love you for helping. Secondly, we want you to know that we don't go away. Next semester, we will start loud and clear with the Secretary of Labor in the Clinton administration, Robert Reich, followed by the Secretary of Defense in the Clinton administration, Bill Perry, with a new little film he's made with Secretary Kissinger and Secretary Schultz, trying to get rid of those damn things called nuclear weapons. We're going to ship them to Singapore and let you people take care of them down there. Consul General from Singapore is here in the front with us. We also are going to have the 2 art museums come over with their curators. We're going to do a wonderful show on Bali, which will be at the Asian Museum, that island paradise. And then we will do the Tolmecs of Mexico with the Young Museum curator, who will be bringing that gigantic show here to the city. We will also have a number of other features that I can hardly remember, but I certainly will remember one, because it will appeal to my Italian friends, and it is that the San Francisco Giants are coming here in the form of their top leadership to tell us about big business baseball on the Pacific Rim. If you don't know it, it's basically many Asians who play better baseball than we do, people in Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. And so we'll be talking about that. Since the Giants seem to be losing lots of players these days, they will soon be going to Asia to hire some more. So we will have them here with us along with the various secretaries. We have some great books that are coming in. There's a fabulous book that's out now in which a Chinese American, but he was Chinese Beijing, he wrote a book praising the Charlie Chan movies. If you know anything about the Chinese, they don't find Charlie Chan an attractive figure. And so this book is called Quite Austere. He's now over at this very frozen city called Ithaca, New York, where there is a Cornell, which is the USF of New York State. And he will be flying out here to tell us about his book. We're also having one of the great classic professors at Stanford come up and tell us about his new book, which explains why China will in fact have a century, and it's the century you're just moved into. And so the 21st will be the Chinese century, according to this particular book. And at the end of the semester, this semester in June, the San Francisco Opera has chosen us to come to the center to try and explain Richard Wagner and the Ring of the Nibelungen. This is a four-set opera that drives most people crazy. It's the rise of humankind, the fall of the gods, and it'll be done in a three-part series here for the whole month of June. And we are one of the venues for Das Ring. So you'll have that. And then even next semester in this fall, we know what we're going to be doing. Isabel Allende will be coming back with her new novel, and the San Francisco Opera will be coming back to give us Puccini's Turandot, his Chinese opera. So I'm telling you all of this so that you will sign up. We have a fishbowl outside. You can put your name, you're on an email list, and then you will hear from us for the rest of your life. And if you don't have email, you can put your address and we will mail you a card, because we'd like to see all of you again here with us for all the many different shows and exhibits and events we're going to do. And now please join me before you rush out to get wine and other things in the lobby area. Join me in thanking Sharon Stone for being with us tonight. You were wonderful. Thank you. Sharon will be with us for the next half hour. She's not running away to do a film right away. So if you had a question I didn't get to you, please come up and Sharon will talk to you.